Hi, everyone. It's Mike Morse. Thanks for tuning in and listening to another episode of Open Mic. Today we have former Representative Brian Banks, also an attorney, on the show today. And for his intro, I decided he just wrote a book, which I actually read yesterday. And the intro was from a judge that I knew and respected, Judge Denise Langford Morris. I'm going to read what she has to say about Brian Banks, and then we're going to bring him onto the show. She said, as a native Detroiter, world traveler, and seasoned jurist, I have met many people in my lifetime. While serving the public, I have learned to recognize those with intellect, extremely hard work ethics, true Christian values, determination, and more importantly, the gift to serve others amongst mankind. These are the very qualities I felt exude from Brian Banks when I first met him many years ago. My dream is that one day he will appear in the people's court again, serving others. He is deserving of another chance to fulfill my dream and his. I thought that was amazing. Let's bring on former state representative Brian Banks.
You never know who you're going to see,
Be one guy one-on-one my whole career.
what you're going to hear,
We got a lot of desperate people in the city.
or what they've got to say.
When you can take people inside of a crime.
That's what you're going to hear on my podcast, Open Mic. Find it where you find your podcasts.
Hi, Brian.
Well, hi, Mike. How are you?
I'm fantastic. Thank you for being on Open Mic.
Well, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure. I'm glad to see you again.
You and I met many years ago when you were a state representative here in Michigan. You were probably the best fighter against no-fault reform that I've met to this day. And you were tenacious and smart and cared, and I appreciated it. And that was a great way to get to know you. So that's what I remember. And unfortunately, you're no longer a state rep, and bad stuff happened when you went away. Our governor instituted some terrible reform in the no-fault arena for no reason. What do you think about what this isn't even a question I was going to ask you, but what do you think about the no-fault changes that are going into effect right now?
Well, Mike, I think it's unfortunate that we really didn't have a true leader to rise up to speak truth to power regarding the no-fault issue. I became passionate about the no-fault issue for a number of reasons. My uncle, who resided in New Jersey at the time, had experienced a catastrophic injury. And New Jersey was a at-fault state. And as a result, my uncle did not receive the quality of care that he deserved and needed to sustain a certain quality of life. And so that was a personal reason for me to take on the no-fault fight. But not only that, I worked at AAA. My very first job was at AAA Michigan. And I learned the ins and outs. And then in law school, where I graduated, and I do have a law degree. I'm not a practicing attorney, but I do have a law degree. In law school, I took no-fault law, and one of my professors was one of the best in the state, Attorney George Sinus. And so I had an interest there. And so when I went to the legislature, I went to fight for those individuals who lived in urban and rural areas who paid high cost car insurance, but not only high cost car insurance, but were being discriminated against, legalized discrimination, because they were being charged for where they lived. Insurance companies were allowed to use non-driving factors such as your zip code, your credit score, your gender, your education status, your occupation to determine what your insurance rates would be. And so it was very unfortunate that our governor signed this legislation into law that gave promises of lower car insurance. And as I've seen personally, and I've heard from countless others, none of us are saving. And it's yet the same individuals who are paying the high cost of insurance. And it's like the insurance companies are allowed to discriminate with no type of cost containment, no type of accountability like in other states. And so it's unfortunate, but I do believe that there's some opportunity to do some reforms to correct this wrong. It was just unfortunate the governor did this at the time that she did, especially without allowing all the stakeholders to come to the table to have a discussion.
Why do you think she gave a gift to the Republicans and to the insurance companies without caring about her constituents in Michigan. Why do you think she did it? Do you have any insight as to why she made such a error in judgment?
Well, I would say, I think she was trying to fill a campaign promise. I think it was low hanging fruit for her. But I don't believe that the issue was studied in its entirety. I've had a number of conversations with the governor before the legislation was signed and since the legislation was signed regarding this. And I don't believe that the governor nor her staffers really invested the time to really learn and understand the issue in its totality. There are layers to this insurance issue. It's not just insurance rates, but we have those who are grandfathered in the system. We have those who've paid into no-fault systems, and they are expecting to receive a certain quality of care. And so we have issues that this legislation really didn't address, but there are a number of things that can be done that doesn't require a legislative fix. There are some issues with fraud on both sides of the spectrum from not only the insurance companies, but the insured. There are a number of things that we can do to correct this wrong. But I believe the governor was trying to act in the interest of fulfilling a campaign promise, but it wasn't right, and it hasn't.
I haven't met one person who has saved any money on auto default insurance. And I'm talking to my clients. I haven't met one person. The bill was a farce. The bill was a scam. I have no idea why that she wanted the insurance companies to make billions more dollars. This governor, like or hate her, this was a terrible, terrible thing she did to Michiganders, and I'm going to hold her accountable. And I'm going to keep having people on the show like you, and we're going to have people on to talk about that their rates aren't going up, their benefits went down, the fee schedules are coming into effect, which are going to be a disaster for people to get the right medical care. It's just it's horrific.
I'll say this, I served with the governor. I consider the governor a friend. We don't agree on this issue. She's aware of that, but I believe that she will right her wrong eventually.
I hope you're right, and I'll hold you to that.
And I've taken some of my clients to a meeting with her, and we've had some discussions on a path to try to right some of these wrongs. And so, anyone taking a new position, you have a lot thrown at you, especially you're governing the whole state and you're trying to find solutions to problems, and you're not always going to get it correct. Now, I don't make excuses for her, because there were tons of information and resources and people that she could have pulled on to gather information from all sides. And I just don't believe that the adequate time and study was done to understand this issue so we could address it and get it right the first time.
So my blood's boiling. I didn't know we were going to talk about this. Let's move on, Brian, to talk about more exciting things. I want to talk about you. I want to talk about your book. You have a fascinating story, and you're very open about your story. The first day we met, we had lunch, and I remember you telling me, the story about your former, criminal activity that you unfortunately got messed up in, and the fact that you weren't able to get licensed in the state with your your law degree. What happened to you during your third term? I mean, you were very open and honest and transparent, and you took responsibility. And I liked that about you from the day I met you. I think you're highly intelligent, great dresser, good man. And so let's dig into this. I mean, for people who don't know, you grew up in Detroit. You were in Denby High School. You were a straight A student, and you dropped out your senior year.
Correct.
Give us a brief version of what happened there and why that happened.
So at the time, a little bit about me to lay a foundation. I'm born and raised on the east side of Detroit. I was raised by a single mother, a strong Black woman. I did not know my father at the time. My grandfather was the only father figure in my life. And so my grandfather and my mother provided a good quality of life for me. But that wasn't just my entire family. I lived with a blended family. And so as you see in my book, I talk about a blended family. I had a step grandmother who unfortunately was an alcoholic. I had a step grandmother who unfortunately took issue with the relationship that my grandfather had with my mother and I, the closeness. And so every day at my house, There was arguments every day at my house. There was fighting, and so by the time I made it to the 12th, 11th grade, exiting the 11th grade, I was at a very dark spot in my life. I was dealing with a lot, more than the average 16, 17-year-old should have to deal with. And so I began to skip school. I began to hang out with the wrong people. And unfortunately, the teachers, until about 3 or 4 weeks of me skipping. And so I finally shared it with my mom and my grandfather that I had been skipping and I didn't want to go back. So they took me out of Denby High School and they put me into Lutheran East. And that wasn't any better. That was just where all the trouble kids from Denby went. And those families who could afford to pay to go to a private school. And so I skipped there as well, while my grandfather was paying the tuition every month. And I would go to Eastland Mall. And so my grandfather told me, hey, you can't stay here if you're not going to go to school. You have to get a job or you have to go to school. And so I ventured out and got a job and I started making good money. But I also started hanging out with the wrong people. And as a result, hanging out with the wrong people, we ended up using credit cards that wasn't ours. We ended up using credit cards that we didn't have permission to obtain. And we would go on shopping sprees. And we would use those cards and then pay the cards off with checks that were no good. And it went from shopping at Eastland to Northland, from Northland to Somerset Mall. And it went from little small items to high ticket items. And as a result, I began to rack up charges in Oakland County and Wayne County. And as a result, I began
criminal charges, or you're talking about purchases right now?
Criminal charges.
Right. You started.
And at that point, through the justice system, I started through the criminal justice system. I started, and I had a few issues in district courts, and they were resolved. But it wasn't until 1999 when I went before Judge Denise Langford Morse. This tall, beautiful African-American woman at the time was the only African-American judge in Oakland County. I had a friend who had gone before her, and they were saying, well, we hope you get this Black judge. She's at least fair. She will at least tell you the truth, and she's going to talk to you like a mother and an aunt, but she's also going to execute judgment. And she's also going to, sentence you. But she'll do it in a manner that will hopefully resonate with you. And so as I went through the criminal justice system, every time the credit card was swiped, that was a charge. And so there were 17 charges that I was looking at of using a credit card that wasn't mine. And so this judge didn't know me, but she saw what was going on. And so I had a retained attorney, and the judge kept pressing upon my attorney and the prosecutor to work a deal out. And not having any experience with the criminal justice system, as time went on, I got aggravated because here it is. I've now been arrested. I'm now going through the court proceedings. I had a very good job at the time at EDS, which was a part of General Motors at the time. And here it is. My grandfather bonded me out of Oakland County Jail. My bond was like $60,000. And my grandfather came and got me the next day, and we retained an attorney. But I'm going through the process, and now I've lost my job. And it seems that I show up for court and it's adjourned for 2 weeks. It's adjourned for 3 weeks. And having not experienced this, I'm getting frustrated because now I got to pay for gas to come from the east side of Detroit to Pontiac. Now I'm on my own. My grandfather's like, there's no more I'm going to do. I've gotten you an attorney. I bonded you out. I have to make some decisions. I was losing hope. I was losing, all my aspirations and dreams. I lost my apartment. I lost my job. And so little did I know, the judge was being a very effective, thorough jurist and reading the facts of the case and determining what was going to be allowed to stay and what was going to be kicked out. And so after a long process, there were a ton of charges that were dismissed because I had not done those things. And so at the end of the day, I was sentenced to a year probation and the first 6 months on a tether. And so the tether was in lieu of jail. And I got the tether on, and I was applying for jobs, trying to do right, because at this time I have court costs and restitution, and I didn't want to be violated. And so I researched how to remove a tether. And funny as it may sound, while I was researching it, there was an article that said take a screwdriver and a hammer and get the tether off. I'm like, no, that's not what I was referring to. But I wrote a motion to get the tether removed without an attorney because I couldn't afford an attorney anymore. And it was at that point that the judge spoke to me openly. And she said some things to me that I didn't even know still existed in me. She spoke greatness in me. She said, do you realize you've just written a motion on your own? You filed it. You've come here on motion day. And I was terrified. When I opened the door on her motion call day, there were white men with suits on in the courtroom. And here it is. I'm a black boy that's dropped out of high school, no attorney, and I'm going to ask for my tether to be removed because it's a motion I filed. And I argued against the prosecutor. And that day, my motion was removed. But that next day, I went and got my GED. 2 days later, I went and enrolled at Wayne State University. The judge said to me, get in school, stay in school. You need to be in someone's law school. It was always a dream of mine to become an attorney and one day to sit on the bench as an officer of the court. But I thought, because of my poor choices and my poor decisions, that my life was truly over for me. I thought, you know what? I'll never be able to obtain any of my dreams and my goals and my aspirations. But luckily and thankfully, and thanks be to God, who always causes us to triumph, even in our darkest hour, I went and got my bachelor's degree from Wayne State in 3.5 years. I got my master's degree. I started substitute teaching. I then taught third grade at a charter school for a while. And then I applied to law school. And I got denied a couple times. And luckily, I went to Michigan State University for a tour. And I went on a tour with the old elementary school classmate of mine. And during that law school tour, we met one of the law school deans, who was the only African-American dean, and the diversity officer. And after our tour, they took us into their office and just had some conversations, and we just shared our experiences. And they thought that I would be a good fit in Michigan State University's law school, their conditional program. And that was a program where you had to apply, and if admitted, you had to go stay on campus for 6 weeks, and you had to take 2 main courses. We took civil procedure, and we took property, and we took a research and writing class. And at the completion of that 6 weeks, if you passed the classes, then you would be offered a full-time seat in the fall class. And I was offered a seat in that fall class.
Which, I'm gonna stop you for a second. I mean, it's an amazing, it's an amazing story, Brian. It's an amazing story of triumph, and that that this judge helped you, and you listened to the signs, and you got your GED. And what year was it that you entered law school?
2007.
And you finished it in 3 years?
Finished it in 2010. Yes, the only African American male in my graduating class of 380.
Wow. And you took the bar?
No, I took the bar, but I did not get a character and fitness clearance, and then I withdrew.
Hold on. I didn't ask that. You took the bar, though. Did they let you take the bar exam?
Yes.
And did you pass the bar exam?
No.
Okay. Is that because of the character and fitness part?
I missed the bar exam by 2 points,
and
then I needed a character and fitness clearance.
Will you ever take it again?
I can take it again only once I get a character and fitness clearance.
Got it. Now, for those people who don't know, Michigan lawyers, and this is not the same in every state, have to go through a process called character and fitness. And every lawyer has to be vetted to make sure that their character and fitness is up to the standards that the Michigan rules and responsibilities have in place. And not everybody makes it through. And what Brian is saying is he applied, he went through this committee, but because of the crimes that he committed and pled guilty to, they would not let him be a licensed attorney in the state, whether or not he passed the exam or not. Is that basically true, Brian?
That's basically true, but I will say this in fairness. When I look back 10 years ago, I wasn't ready. When I went before the Character and Fitness Committee, I had just graduated from law school. I had a grandfather who I had become his caregiver and his guardian and conservator, who was dying, and I had a lot going on. But not only that, I wasn't ready maturity-wise. When I went back and I read the report from the Character and Fitness Committee, it was a hard pill to swallow to read, that I would accept responsibility back then, but I would also minimize my involvement or minimize my engagement. Um, but also, there were some other factors which I think people who don't understand the character and fitness process, they look at everything from the time you're 18. You have to list every address you've lived at from 18 to your current age, every employer you've had from that time, any lawsuit you've had, whether it was civil, criminally, whether you sued someone, whether they've sued you, whether there was some criminal charges, if you sat on any boards, they want to know everything about you. And so one thing I have to say, and I'm not, thanks to God, I'm not here anymore. But when you've experienced poverty, poverty is a domino effect. And couple that and add on to living in poverty with having felony convictions where it's hard to obtain gainful employment. And so for me, it was one thing to obtain a job, but then it was also another thing to stay current on my bills. And so here it is. I have felonies. Here it is. I've lived in poverty. It wasn't that you live above your means, but you try to make ends meet. And so I had to explain everything. I had to explain that I had to put myself aside to care for a grandfather who was the only father that I knew. And so I really wasn't ready. And when I look at where I was 10 years to where I am now, I'm a totally different person, maturity wise, professional wise, credit wise. And so I'm going to give it another shot.
Tell me, that's my next question. When are you giving it another shot?
I started the process recently, but I'm going to hold off for a minute and really put my best foot forward after getting some counsel from some individuals who've sat on character and fitness. I retained an attorney. The attorney I retained went to prison for several armed robberies. And he got out of prison after robbing several banks.
And got his license back?
He never had a license prior, but he went through a rigorous process and had some DUIs after that, but he eventually got through.
If he can do it, Brian.
Absolutely.
You can do it.
Absolutely. And so
you get through the process, they pass you, and then you got to take the bar exam again?
Correct.
Which won't be fun.
Correct. No, but I'll pass and then I'll come work for Mike Morse.
Hey,
we'll just win.
Brian, listen, I would love to support you, man. I think you got a great story, and I think if I can do anything to help you get through this process, will you let me know?
I sure will, and I appreciate that. I genuinely appreciate that, and those who have supported me throughout the years, including Judge Morse.
You've always been a man of your word, and you've always did what you said you were going to do, and I have no doubt in my mind that you get through this. So if you need help, let me know. I want to talk about your time in the Michigan State Legislature. Briefly, tell us why you decided to run for Congress here in Michigan.
So I was currently living in Harper Woods, Michigan, and my district that I lived in back in 2011, 2012 was a very diverse district. It had all 5 Girls Points, Harper Woods, and the east side of Detroit, a portion of the east side. But unfortunately, Detroit and those people of color, we really didn't have representation. And so I had reached out to my elected official at the time and really didn't get the answer and response that I should have received. And so as a result of that, I began having conversations with individuals about possibly running for state representative. Little did I know that the following year, the district seat was going to be redrawn. And as a result, there was no incumbent in the seat. So it was an open seat. And so I remember being on the phone with a very good friend of mine, retired Wayne County Judge Vonda Evans, and I shared with her that I was thinking about running for state representative. And she couldn't believe me. She said, "You're not going to do it." I said, "Oh, yeah, I'm really considering it." I said, "Over the years, I've watched you campaign. I've helped you campaign. I've helped others campaign. I really think I could put together a campaign team and be successful. I think I can put forth a message." And so we discussed, well, are you going to share your past? Absolutely. I believe there are a number of people who are disenfranchised and people who've gone through the system. And if it's not them, they know someone. And so I believe that, with my experience, professional experience of having been a teacher, and by that time I was an adjunct professor, as well as having a bachelor's or master's in the law degree, that I could really be a valuable asset in the state legislature. And so I decided to run in 2012. I ran on a shoestring budget. I didn't have a huge team. It was my mother, my brother, and a few friends on the weekend. But we knocked doors every day. I raised a little under $30,000, but we knocked doors 5 and 6 hours a day. I couldn't even afford a mail house in the beginning. So my mother and some female family friends and volunteers would get together and they would put the labels on all my mail-ins. And we would take them to bulk mail and mail them that way. But after all that hard work, I was successful in winning my first election in 2012 by 96 votes. And it was a field of 5. And out of the 5, 3 of the 5 had already run before, and one of them was a previous elected official. And I ran in 2012. I won, and I was sworn in January of 2013, despite some people saying, oh, he's not going to be seated because of his felonies. Well, that had already been tested by a number of other former legislators who had felonies when they arrived in the state legislature. And so I was seated and I began to serve. In my first term in office, I never missed a day at work. I never missed a vote. I had 100% voting record. I had 100% attendance because I believed that it was important that my constituents' voice was there at the Capitol every day that a vote was taken up. And so as a result, I began doing a lot of community work. The first event I had was for ex-offenders, help them get their records expunged. I had health and community days, health fairs, back to school fairs. Every year we adopted 50 to 60 families for Christmas. And so we just were very strong in the community. 2014 came, I ran for re-election. I was told you're going to be a one-time legislator. You know, this young lady's moving back from DC. She's going to outraise you. She's going to out-campaign you. And I said, look, everyone has a right to run. It's a part of the democratic process. But I have a right to fight and retain my seat, and my record will speak for itself. And in 2014, I was reelected, and I got more votes than I got in 2012. But not only that, I was then elected by my colleagues as the chairman of the Detroit caucus.
Let's talk about that. That's a very, very powerful Democratic caucus. What was that like after the 10 years before and all that you went through, walking in as the chairman of a very powerful Black caucus? What was that like? Take me through that.
So when you look at the state house, in the state house, we had 10 seats that represented the Detroit area. And in the Senate, we had 5 seats that represented the city of Detroit. And so we had the biggest voting block in the state house, 10 votes. So, and we took a caucus position, it could make you or break you. You know, it could pass a bill or cause a bill to fail. But it was more important for me to get all 15 members of our caucus unified around common issues that affected and plagued the city of Detroit for years. And one of them was the insurance issue. Another was the fate of Detroit public schools and its deficit that it was facing at the time, almost $900 million deficit. And so it was important that my colleagues and I learned and knew the issues, but it was also important that we stood up for the least of these, that we stood up for every citizen in the city of Detroit and our entire districts. And so here it is, I became the most powerful African American in the state legislature. We didn't have any other, we didn't have a Black lieutenant governor at that time. And so here it is, I'm the chair of the caucus. And so there was a lot of pressure because I had to work with everyone.
And you were starting to make some enemies because you were taking some unpopular positions.
Absolutely.
Before we get to your 2016 story, you know, what do you think was your most unpopular decision or decisions or backings that you were making in 2015 leading up to 2016?
Well, one of them was the mayor of Detroit introduced auto no fault legislation called de-insurance. And
it was a dumb idea.
And
dumb.
You know, everyone was looking for a solution. Some solutions worked, some didn't. And the mayor introduced the de-insurance, and I didn't agree with it. I didn't agree with it from the onset, sitting at the Manoogian Mansion. But I didn't just not agree with it. I offered alternatives, and I offered solutions, and I offered amendments. And I tried to work with the mayor as well as at the time his corporation counsel was Butch Hollowell at the time. And myself and my colleagues put together amendments, and we spoke with all the stakeholders. We spoke with the hospital association. We spoke with trial lawyers like yourself. We spoke with the rehabilitative provider, the Brain Injury Association. We spoke with the home health care providers to find out what is needed to address all of the complex issues around auto no fault. And we gave a number of amendments and remedies and suggestions. Unfortunately, I believe a deal had already been cut between the mayor and the Republicans, where our efforts were not accepted, our offers were not accepted. And as a result, I opposed strongly the insurance that was in its current state. As a result of me opposing, our entire caucus opposed. And then,
and let's fast forward to what happened to you.
hold on, after our Democratic caucus opposed, our entire Democratic caucus took a position to oppose. So there was no way for it to get out of the legislature with the entire House Democratic caucus opposing, which included the 10 reps from Detroit. And so at that point, conversations picked back up, and I thought we were going to work together to come out with legislation that was going to provide savings, but relief without taking away the protections that our current system had at the time. As a result, we didn't get anywhere. And as a result, I stayed strong on, I didn't support the legislation.
All right, let me take the story. It's my interview here, Brian. You're hijacking it. And then, so you're thwarting our powerful mayor. And literally, you have an election coming up in 2016 for your third term, correct?
Correct.
And as this is happening, and as you're being a thorn in their side, people are running against you.
Correct.
There's rumors that people in your own party put people up against you. True?
Correct.
And one day you're home and you get a knock on the door by a couple of FBI agents.
Correct.
Take us through that story.
So we're in June of 2016. The filing deadline had passed. I have some opponents that are running. One opponent actually lived down the street from me, and there's a backstory to all that with that opponent. But do
you believe the mayor put this person up against you?
I listen. I can't say what's been done. All I know is politics is a dirty game.
Okay.
And
you're still a politician apparently, but let's for sake of time, what happened? So the FBI.
I get a knock on my door on Monday, around June the 27th or 28th of 2016, that Monday, and it's about 9:15 in the morning. I'm not expecting anyone at my house until 10, which was my staff and volunteers to come campaign. I get a knock on the door, and it's two individuals. They show me their badge. I let them into my house. They tell me that they're at my house to speak to me about some historical information. And I said, historical as an old? And they said, yes. And so I set them at the dining room table, and they said, we want to talk to you about a loan. I said, I don't have a loan. They said, yeah, we know you don't have a loan. Well, we're going to talk about an old loan. I said, well, all my loans are paid that I've ever got. They're paid. And they said, yeah, we know it's paid, but there was a loan you got and the income didn't add up. And I said, what? I haven't had a loan in a couple years, and my loans have been paid off. But how about this? Give me your card and I'll get an attorney and have the attorney to come talk to you. So, the gentleman that was there was a male and a female. He said, well, you're an attorney. I said, I have a law degree. But even if I was an attorney, every good attorney needs an attorney. And I'll get an attorney and we'll contact you.
So let's fast forward, Brian. I don't want to go through every single detail. I want them to read your book to hear the details.
Okay.
You hired not the best attorney in town, in my personal private opinion. And basically, it turns out that our Republican Attorney General was investigating you for saying that you were earning too much money on a 2010 loan.
Correct.
And your attorney basically convinced you to plead guilty to that.
So after going through the process, it was a long, drawn-out process. And after going through the process, offer was made to dismiss the felonies, but I would have to resign from office. And it was clear that they just wanted me out of the way.
So,
And
I mean, by reading your book and talking, I knew you during this time. I mean, it clearly seemed political. You have no evidence directly who did this, but you have people running against you. A Republican.
There's a lot of dots that we've connected. There's a lot of dots that we've connected. When you look at the attorney general who signed the warrant, his wife gave my opponent $2,900 6 weeks before the charges were brought against me. What's the coincidence? And they didn't live in my state rep district. There are a lot of dots that we connected. However, fast forward, I ended up resigning from office, and folks thought life was over for me, but I didn't, because I didn't need a title to serve. I still remained active. I started a consultant company, and God has blessed me with some phenomenal clients. We've done some great work together on a number of policy issues. But not only that, I've remained active and consistent in the community. I still, do community events. Earlier this year, right before the pandemic, I did a voting event to educate people called Voting While Black. We had Dr. Cornel West present. We had Ohio State Senator Nina Turner, who we see on MSNBC a lot. We had a number of representatives that represented Vice President Biden during his candidacy. And so I've remained out front on issues, outspoken, and a pillar in the community as relates to constituent services and addressing needs in the community. But I took the time to write a book.
I know that, but here's your book.
Yes.
Do you think you're going to run again for that third term?
No, I won't run again for the third term, but political office is not out of my future. And so,
you want to make an announcement on open mic? What could be in your future?
Well, we have right now a redistricting panel that's out there that's going to draw the lines of districts, and we'll see what happens when those lines are drawn. We'll see what the opportunities present, but it's not out my future, and I look forward to serving in some capacity, official elected capacity, because I've never stopped serving. But it's because of individuals like yourself and others who were very supportive of not just in your words but in your deeds, and who believed in me and the work that I had done. And so I want to say this, and it goes back to the book. But in 2016, when those charges were brought, I was in the toughest re-election of my life. But it was supposed to cause me to lose my re-election. But not only did I win my re-election, I won with more votes than I ever had gotten. But not only that, I raised more money than any other Democratic state representative that term.
Wow.
Because people believed in the work I had done.
Yeah, so, I remember. I think I was at a fundraiser for you. You were fighting the no fault. You were fighting against the mayor, and a Republican AG comes in, and they didn't think you were going to win, and correct. You won, and that was an amazing feat. And unfortunately, less than a month later, you had to resign. I think the citizens of Detroit lost out by you having to do that. But I'm happy that you have lots of consulting clients, and you're working, and you're still in the community, and you're still fighting against no fault, and you're still helping people. And you wrote a book. I highly recommend it to everybody who wants to learn about Brian's life to pick this up on Amazon. We'll have the where people could buy this in our show notes. But it was an interesting read, and I appreciate I appreciate you writing this, and I appreciate you, Brian. And thank you for coming on Open Mic. And I wish you only the best success. I look forward to seeing what you do next, because I know it's going to be something big, and you got to get that license first. Get that JD degree. Maybe you'll fulfill that dream of being a judge one day.
Listen, I already got the JD degree. Just need the P number, and we're going to work and pray and believe that it's going to happen. But individuals and people can go to my website, www.ithad2happen.com, and purchase your book, ithad2happen.com. But I greatly and sincerely appreciate you for your support over the years. Also, whenever I text and say, hey, I have a candidate that I'm working with, would you have a conversation with them? And look, my candidates have been winning. And so we need good folks in office, regardless of what branch of government. But I appreciate you and all the things you do that the public know, and all the things that you do that you never tell. And so I thank you, and the residents in the city of Detroit thank you. And I know that you have some extra stars in your crown for what you do for individuals that you never tell.
Thanks, Brian. That means a lot, man. All right. Good talking to you today, and we'll talk soon.
All right. Thank you so much.
There you have it, Brian Banks, JD. Hopefully he'll be getting his P number soon. Maybe you'll see him on a bench, a legal bench, a judicial bench in the near future. Brian really is one of the great legislators we've had here in Detroit. And I wish him the best and thank him for coming on. If you know anybody who would like to watch this interview or hear it, please send it to them. Subscribe to Open Mic, make some comments. Tell me who else you want to hear on this show, because I will get them. I will bring them to you. This is fun. I love talking to old friends and bringing on new people. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Have a great day.